if I may, NHL GMs, I would just like to let you know that offer sheets, not only can they work, but they can work for all parties involved. Case in point, the Montreal Canadiens, the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Arizona Coyotes. The soon-to-be Tempe Coyotes. Okay? This is one of the most...
Oklahoma City Thunder of the NHL.
Yeah, literally. There is... I don't know if there's a bad side to any of this. Usually with a trade, you're like, who won, who lost? I don't see an L here for anybody.
I could see there being one for... Ironically, the most likely L out of the three is Carolina.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, but there's still an upside there. And Jesse mentioned it when we first talked about the Kotkaniemi offer sheet, and we'll start there. So Carolina, you're the one, you guys are the ones who you put the offer sheet forward, and you think that you have to put an offer sheet forward that is compelling enough that you think the other team won't match it.
The compensation is low enough so that your organization isn't hamstringed by this deal.
Right, yeah. Right. Now, they have a strong farm system. They built mostly from within. Obviously, some very suspect moves this offseason.
Yeah.
Again, if you could spend 6.1 on Kotkaniemi, tell me why you can't spend 9 on Hamilton. Don't understand it.
They drafted and developed Nedeljkovic. What a success story.
And fired him out the window the next chance they got.
Shit.
And they got
him.
2 injury-prone goalies in their 30s to replace him.
Like, I would love to know if anyone in Carolina's room was like, well, we can afford the first and third because we got a third for Nedeljkovic. So really, it's like a first and Nedeljkovic. And I'm like, that's horrible.
That's still bad.
That's worse. What are you talking about?
One day somebody's going to actually tell us what went on with Nedeljkovic. I would love to know.
Or half of the things they've done this offseason. But by and large, offer sheets are back on the menu.
Well, but what I want to say is if you're Carolina, the thing with Kotkaniemi is everybody's like, he makes $6.1 million. Oh, my God. Yeah, here's the thing, though.
This year.
If you want to sign him to a longer-term deal, which is what he wants, Jesse, what can happen?
They can sign him at any number.
That's
they don't have to sign him at the 6.1, but Montreal would have had to.
Right. Mm-hmm. So not only are you screwing Montreal, and listen, screw Montreal.
I mean,
screw another team. Why not?
For all the reasons we listed at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, go screw the other team. Sure. Whatever.
I think sometimes GMs forget that they're competitors, and it's not all about relationships. Sometimes you're trying to actually beat the other team.
Yeah. Yes. And sometimes you're literally trying to screw them, and and it's just naked, and that's okay. But here's the thing. They end up with a pretty good player who probably needed a change of scenery, let's be honest. A player who was not developed properly by his own admission and probably by Marc Bergevin as well. The fact that he probably should have stayed in Sweden an extra year. I mean, it was a good pickup at the time because they needed centers.
Finland.
But the problem... Sorry, Finland. What did I say? Sweden?
Yeah.
Okay, I meant
the
Finland.
Other one.
I meant Finland.
Right, Adam?
Sorry. The thing I'm trying to say is that, like, Montreal goofed that because Montreal goofed the position they were in when they drafted him. They should have had centers already. Mm-hmm. You draft the best player available. You don't draft for position. They drafted for position. He had a good start. I remember Grant McKegg saying he could be better than Matthews. Like, listen, this all was all happening. And then, the next 2 years have been a bit underwhelming. And then, of course, he's scratched in the Stanley Cup Finals. All that said, 6.1 for him isn't going to kill you if you can get him at 3.5 to 4 for 4 or 5 more years. And he's your third line center.
3.5 would be masterful.
Be beautiful. It's still a very good hockey player.
I would be shocked. I wonder if he does. I mean, what this could be for Kotkaniemi is essentially a 9-year contract.
Yeah.
Right? Because he gets the 1 and then he can sign for 8.
And that pretty much guarantees your whole stay in the league.
I mean, basically, how many players get like an 11-year career or 12-year career?
It's amazing.
If it ended at the very end of it, which it probably will not.
Yep.
The biggest variable here, like Christian Dvorak.
Well, hold on. Stay on Kotkaniemi for
sorry.
now.
But I say that to say Kotkaniemi is I guess the first-round pick Arizona got, so a bigger wild card. But Kotkaniemi is not a
proven commodity.
Proven commodity. He's not the complete package yet, right? He's definitely not a third overall pick. The way he's played, he's fine. Mm-hmm. He has lots of room to grow. He could get better.
At 3 overall, you want a player who hops in and plays his position well.
Yes, and probably plays right away, except when he shouldn't. and this has been the whole thing with Kotkaniemi is I don't think they did the best for his development. I don't. Now, did the Habs do the best for the Habs? Well, I mean, they just went to the Stanley Cup final, so I don't know. It's kind of hard to argue against it. If they felt keeping Kotkaniemi out of the lineup in certain situations was the right decision, and then won and advanced and stuff, it's a little bit difficult to argue against. But now they lose this player.
Right.
But I would argue,
with the development, Jeff Merrick brought up something interesting on 31 Thoughts. He said that maybe instead of like pulling him out of the lineup so consistently and scratching him, you start him on the wing.
Yes.
You know? Like,
Yeah.
Why not just
They
start
just
him?
seem to punish him.
Right.
Like,
so they
I'm
throw
sorry,
him-
You're young. We're gonna have to punish you.
You're 20 years old and we're asking you to play first line or second line center in the NHL right away at 20. Start him on the wing, ease him into that, and then if his future landing point is center, then he gets there eventually. But why not just give him an easier go in the NHL so he succeeds and then he grows from there?
And Kadri and Nylander are similar in that they're both top 10 picks. They were drafted as centers, I believe. But they spent their time in the minors, and the organization, under different regimes, had time to decide whether or not they even liked those players in center. Naz, they decided yes. Willie, they decided no. And
Until the 2020 playoffs.
in game 5,
in the third period.
Because why not, everybody?
mystifyingly,
It's Toronto Maple Leafs.
Setting him up for success. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
hey Yanni, when was the last time you played? Oh, well, and they just hucked him. Oh, my God.
Yep.
Everything comes back to the Leafs.
So then we move on to, so it works out for Carolina. Now with Montreal, and we have focused a little bit on Montreal, but Carolina, I mean, obviously, I think you get some depth, and that's good. And you probably, you overpay for him this year, but it's a couple $1 million. Who cares? Does anything that has happened in Carolina this offseason make sense? No.
No.
Do we think that Tom Dundon okayed this, not wanting to take revenge on the Montreal Canadiens? Because Don Waddell said, if this wasn't a good hockey decision, we wouldn't have made it.
Well, it was a slight against him.
Well, it was a slight against Don. It was a slight against Tom.
It wasn't a slight against Dom because Don.
Don.
I keep saying Dom. The argument, again, 31 Thoughts, was Bergevin did Waddell a favor. Because the number,
He did.
the number Aho assigned to is
Great.
perfectly fine. It's. But Tom didn't want to pony up. That was the thing. He didn't want to spend the money. So this was the Montreal Canadiens looking at them and going, well, they're going to cheap out, and we're going to get this player, right? So it was a slight against the owner, not the GM. The GM was happy to get him at that number.
So then did Montreal screw Carolina twice because they just made them overpay for a player that's legitimately not worth $6 million?
Time will tell.
So then I want to move on to Montreal in this. So Montreal obviously loses Kotkaniemi, but they're able to parlay that into Christian Dvorak. Christian Dvorak, who is a little bit older, is a
25.
definite centerman. We know he's a centerman, and he's a bit of like a secondary weapon on the power play too. You know what you're getting with Christian Dvorak.
Money in the bank for between 15 and 20 goals. And Montreal has this unbelievable habit of acquiring players on a bit of a down year and getting the best out of them.
Yeah.
Max Domi. And then, and they just, Spidey sensed he was going to regress, traded him for Josh Anderson, who had a goal. And then he goes out and scores however many he scored. He had that unbelievable start. Thomas Tatar. Who would be shocked? It's amazing how many players play their best hockey in Montreal and how little they were able to get out of Kotkaniemi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't make much sense to me. But they go and get Dvorak, and I know there was that troll tweet going around, he could get 90 points. I would be shocked by that. But, 20-plus goals?
60 points, 65 points?
Maybe even flirt with 30 if he's put in the right position? Sure. I could picture that. He was the guy who scored 72 goals one season in junior because he was on Marner's line. And a guy I can pass to. Don't mind if I do.
Cool.
And he just did every single time.
That's interesting. What did you bring up that point that you brought up just before this one?
What was that?
It was about It was you triggered something, and now I've forgotten.
Montreal getting the most of the guys?
Yeah.
When they trade for them?
It was interesting that I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that, because the more I think about it, the more I think that might have had to do with Claude Julien. And I hate to make this about the coach.
Because you don't like Ducharme.
No.
It's not that I don't like Ducharme personally.
As
I'm
a
sure
person.
No, it's not a personal
As a
attack.
man.
But isn't it funny that as soon as he took over, we really started to see the Kotkaniemi relationship deteriorate? And I think it's certain players under certain coaches. Like, we know Domi and Julien didn't get along. So Domi was fired, traded.
That's getting fired.
Essentially, yeah, I guess, or moved on from.
Yeah.
I think with this particular case, it can also be, and nobody ever wants to admit this, the player and the coach don't see eye to eye. Not everybody can work together, right? And it doesn't matter how talented you are as a coach or a player, there's going to be people that just do not work well under you. I'm sure Scotty Bowman would be able to tell you multiple players that were really good that just, they didn't like each other.
Also, coaches are there to develop a culture, but I don't think a lot of coaches are there, especially in the National Hockey League. I don't think they're there to develop players. I don't think most head coaches want to do that. Even coaches in a developmental league. Oh God, what was his name? Greg something. He was the former head coach of the Toronto Marlies.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, it's the playoffs for the Marlies. They got two goalies, Scott Clemenson and Justin Pogge. Guess which one started?
Clemenson. And that was 2012, 2011?
No, it was
2010?
long before that. Like Pogge is still, there's still hope. There's still, he's this blue chip prospect.
Greg Moore.
So he's the top goalie prospect in the organization. He is the great hope for this team. And you start Scott Clemenson, this career journeyman, ahead of him?
Yeah, who was the backup goalie in New Jersey the year before.
Yeah. Well, he was better. I didn't ask that. No, what? So what? He's better. So what? Gives a shit.
I think maybe as Leaf fans, we should have been worried at that point that we made the wrong goalie, Rask or Pogge. That was what it came down to.
I knew right away.
Did you?
I knew right away. I always tell this story. When you're a kid, you think your team can do no wrong and every move they make is the right one. And I remember watching, I think it was the 2005 World Juniors, and Pogge and Team Canada were unbelievable. And then I watched Sweden-Finland, and this Finnish goalie stole the damn show. And I remember on the broadcast, and they're like, oh, and Tuukka Rask, yeah, first-round pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I didn't know that. And I was just like, what? They have Pogge and Rask? Oh my God. And then they traded him, and I was just like, that's an enormous mistake. Because I would, sugar plums dancing in their heads. I was just imagining, like, Pogge starting one game and Rask starting the next, and Rask starting one game and Pogge starting the next. And I was just like, oh my God, the Leafs drafted Curtis Joseph twice. And it's going to be amazing, and they're going to have them forever. And then they had neither.